All right, so on Thursday's podcast, we premiered a new segment called Five Favorites. Joe House was here for that, and it was spectacular. We brought in Anthony DeBundo. He picked his 5 favorite NFL futures. House, you had low expectations, surpassed all of them, correct?
Well, just because I thought you were going to try and speed Ryan us through on these 5 picks, but thank God the Podfather knows. Let the thing breathe. We went double the amount of time you gave us. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the same way when we eat dinner and you decide to get the second entree. I let it breathe. It's like, okay, fine. We'll get the veal chop. Craig Horlbeck is here. He produces the Rewatchables with me. He just hosted the Dodgeball podcast, a movie that I liked and didn't like when it came out. I wrote a kind of half-assed, I like this, but everyone in my theater was stoned kind of review of it. But
I think you were sick of Ben Stiller in 2004. When I was
Is that what it was?
10 years old in 2004, I was not oversaturated with Ben Stiller. So
Ben Stiller fatigue.
Yeah.
Well, but that's the thing about the Rewatchables. You never know. Like Hardball becomes a belated classic. You know, the Replacements, a movie that was like truly terrible in the theater. And now it's like, I love The Replacements. I'm glad it's on. You just don't know. Craig's also on our fantasy football podcast, which is going to become relevant in a second. And he's on The Town as well, our excellent Hollywood podcast. All right, Craig, your assignment. 5 fantasy targets, your favorites.
Yep.
And we're going to go in reverse order from 5 to 1.
Okay.
We are 4 weeks away from the start of the season. The 5 guys you were staring at, and you're in the same position that I was in for years when I had my column way back when I would write fantasy football, which was controversial on page 2 back in the day. People are like, you're going to write entire fantasy football columns. And I would put all my sleepers and my stayaways, and everybody in my league would read the column, and then I would just get completely effed. So you're in the same boat with that. So it's almost like you have to accept it.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing a ringer fantasy draft later today, and you're just going to steal all the players that I did give you right now, I'm sure.
I can't wait to do it. All right, your number 5 in reverse order, your 5th favorite target of the 2024 season is...
Derrick Henry on the Ravens. Look, I just turned 30 last week, and I feel great. And now I'm convincing myself that 30 is just a number, and there is no age cliff for
30 is the new 25.
30 is the new 25. Modern medicine. So look, every year I never draft Derrick Henry because I think it's going to be the year that it ends, that he falls off the cliff, and he never really does. And last year, on a terrible Titans team, he was still a top 15 guy. Really, he was 16th, but still, they were a bottom 5 offense at scoring, terrible O-line, and he had no room to run. Now, I would argue he's in the best situation of his career in Baltimore. Since Lamar has been a quarterback in Baltimore, the Ravens have averaged the most yards per carry in the league, and they're number 1 in yards before contact. It's because everyone's afraid of Lamar, which gives all these guys room to run. It's why Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins average 6 yards a carry. And now, if you would say, oh, well, Lamar in the red zone, Derrick Henry's not going to score as many touchdowns as he typically does. The Ravens don't use Lamar in the red zone. They want to keep him healthy. They don't give him a fourth of the carries that guys like Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts gets.
There's no tush push with Lamar.
Not with Lamar. And it's easy to see because Gus Edwards last year had 13 touchdowns. And now we're upgrading to Derrick Henry. So to me, Derrick Henry is discount Jonathan Taylor this year. And I think he's a first rounder.
Discount Jonathan Taylor, House. Your reaction?
Yeah, I kind of love it. But before I give my full breakdown, I just want to say, speaking of staring at guys, I mean, every time I get on with Craig, his handsomeness, it just comes through. He gets better. He talks about turning 30. He gets better with age. If Cerruti would put his box on, we could do Ringer OnlyFans. This is like talk about a full set of handsome. But speaking of handsome, I love this Derrick Henry pick, and it's exact. So there is no tush push with Lamar Jackson because he's got a tiny tush. He's a skinny dude, and they don't want him up in that muck anyway. What you want is the big bull, and that's Derrick Henry. That's a guy you can trust. You know what he won't do at the goal line and what Baltimore can count on? He ain't going to fumble the football trying to get across the line. They have a middle-of-the-road offensive line in Baltimore. That's fine because Derrick Henry can cover up a lot of that. So notwithstanding whatever you might get from him in terms of rushing yards, you're always going to have those goal line situations. And, Craig said it, 13 TDs. That is nothing to sneeze at.
I was doing a whole bunch of football work the last 5 weeks, including Fantasy Tiers, which I do every year, which is a key podcast for you guys when you're doing this show. And I went back and I looked at my Fantasy Tiers for running backs from 2 years ago. running backs are now like porn stars. Like you go back and look at like the 2022 AVN Awards, and it's just a slew of actors and actresses. And 2 years later, it's a completely different slew of actors and actresses. The names change. Like Damian Harris, I think, was in my third running back tier 2-3 years ago. And I don't even know if he's in the NFL anymore.
So who's Derrick Henry? Lisa Ann? I don't.
It's Derrick Henry. He's just survived. But I noticed him. I noticed McCaffrey. And we're talking like 3 years ago. And now you think like how fast it changes, where you guys did your tiers and Breece Hall and Bijan Robinson were at the top.
Yeah.
A-Chain caused a 15-minute conversation. And none of those guys existed 3 years ago. But it's just funny that Henry, we're wondering, does he still have it? And he's 30. It's not like he's 45.
There's usually a 4-year cycle with running backs. And we are at the beginning of a new 4-year stretch. It's, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jonathan Taylor. A lot of people love Jahmyr Gibbs. But I just think
Etienne,
Henry is
maybe.
in like Etienne, A-Chan. I just think Henry's in the freak category. Like he's in the LeBron camp where he's different. We have to judge him on a different curve than everybody else.
Yeah, and this has been the case since he was like 15 years old.
Yeah.
He was playing high school football and just demolishing people.
He's
and
always been the biggest guy.
Outfield.
He's still the biggest guy. That matters.
Yeah, the case for it is this is like almost like when the Patriots got Corey Dillon in 2004 when Craig was like 10 years old. But this guy that had kind of been buried on bad teams and people still thought the pedigree was there, but we weren't quite positive. And then Corey Dillon was just awesome on the Pats. And the fact that Lamar just doesn't get running touchdowns, I like it. I saw no real signs of attrition with Henry last year. I agree with Craig. Like he said, bad quarterbacks and a bad offensive line. So it was even hard to say like how unstoppable he was. But I like that one. I think it's a fair one. I don't know who he's competing for touchdowns running wise. Who's
Pete
like
Mitchell.
the backup and ball? Yeah, he's going to get him if he's healthy, and he's going to be healthy. All right.
I would not be surprised if he had 15 touchdowns this year. I don't think anybody would.
Do you have A-Chain as one of your 5 or no?
I don't on this list. Is he yours?
Okay. No, I wanted to tell House. They had a huge argument about A-Chain in the running back tiers podcast that I ended up texting the guys about, where every year there's a guy who just, you're jealous if somebody else takes him. If you take him, you know what the stakes are. And I compared him to the veal chop.
Oh, okay.
Every year there's a veal chop guy. When you're at dinner and somebody orders the veal chop, and it's a 50-50 order, depending on the restaurant. You just, if it's a blind restaurant that you've never been to, and somebody gets the veal chop and it's not you, and you're like, I hope the veal chop sucks, because if the veal chop's good, I'm going to have so many regrets. Or if you order it, you're like, I'm super hungry. I probably should have gotten the steak. It's a safe bet, but the veal chop might be awesome. I'm just going to roll the dice with the veal chop. And that's basically A-Chain this year. He will either be incredible, or it's going to be week 4 and you're like, oh my God, he had 7 carries for 20 yards. What happened?
And he like twists his knee and he's out for 8 weeks.
Right. And you're like how did he go for $39 in my league?
That's my concern with Kieran Williams. The twisted
He's another
knee,
one.
That's the one.
Well, how
And
many small injuries and medium-sized injuries has he had already?
Right.
And he's not a big guy, and they just drafted Blake Corum out of Michigan.
Right. And the question with somebody like that is, can he have 280 carries? Is he going to be there in week 14, 15, 16? Henry has the pedigree of, we know he's going to be there. Anyway, all right, your number 4 guy is?
This one's a little more controversial. I'm really like putting my reputation on the line for this. This is definitely a sleeper. This is not like a top 20 guy. I love Josh Palmer on the Chargers this year. I feel like I am alone on a mountaintop shouting Josh Palmer's name. I know in your head, you're like, oh, Josh Palmer, what is he, like 27 years old, 5th round pick? He's actually 24 years old, and he was a 3rd round pick. And now Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are gone in LA. And now Josh Palmer is easily the most experienced receiver on this team. Everyone other than Palmer is either a rookie, a bust, or has never played with Justin Herbert before. And if you look at all the other guys on the team, only 2 have caught a touchdown from Justin Herbert. One is Simi Fehoko, who has 1 catch in his career, and it was for a touchdown. And the other is Quentin Johnston, the 1st-round bust from last year out of TCU.
So we're calling him a bust just because he had 1 bad year?
I mean, he can't even crack the first team in practice right now behind DJ Chark.
Oh, man.
And I mean,
Really?
the new coaching staff has no ties to him. It's not like his competition is incredible and he still can't break the first team. Palmer's got 9 touchdowns over the last 3 years. And if you look at him last year, he was banged up. He was on pace for 1,000 yards while playing with Keenan Allen. And now Mike Williams and Josh Palmer and Keenan Allen are gone. And my rule in fantasy football, I've decided I don't draft wide receivers with shitty quarterbacks. Like I just won't do it. It's not fun. It's like the Arrested Development line. Like I have the worst fucking attorneys. Like I'm just not doing it if you have a bad quarterback. And I think we all need to admit that Josh Palmer's a quality player, and him going outside of the top 150 in drafts is ridiculous. I think he's going to be the leading wide receiver on the Chargers.
So the people that would foil that would be McConkey if he turns out to be good.
Who's hurt right now, but I do like McConkey, but that's really it. He's a rookie and he's hurt.
DJ Chark.
Yeah.
It's a good point because if it's a bad quarterback, odds are nobody will get the yards and the touchdowns. But if it's an above average quarterback or a good quarterback, the yards have to go somewhere. How many guys have we seen over the years end up with 1,200 yards? And they're like, wait, that guy?
And like
1,190 yards? He sucks. How did that happen?
The Harbaugh, Greg Roman offense, they were together in San Francisco, and everyone's like, oh, they're just going to run the ball all the time. They're not going to throw. That's fine. They're still going to throw a little bit. In those,
they're going to need touchdowns.
Those Niners years, Michael Crabtree and Anquan Bolden and Vernon Davis, those guys were all putting up solid fantasy years, and we're just ignoring everybody who catches passes on the Chargers, and it's just because Josh Palmer's irrelevant and unsexy.
Well, the other piece with that is, I've actually liked Josh Palmer in games that I've watched.
He's good. Nobody wants to admit Josh Palmer's good.
He's one of those guys, if he's on the fantasy wire, you do give him the extra look. Where do you stand, House? Where do you stand on the Chargers offense and people scoring touchdowns on it?
I know this one's dicey, your House, so I'll be okay if you don't like this one.
Well, it's not that I don't like it. Where are we supposed to take him? What's the right price? That will help me understand it.
Yeah, is he like an $11 guy? Like in the second tier when people are paying like $17 to get whoever, and you feel like you can kind of steal him?
You'll be able to get him for less than $10. Right now, if in terms of like rankings, he's going outside the top 120, sometimes 150. I think that's insane. He should be going in the top 75, top 85.
Yeah, any number one receiver with a good quarterback at least
with the top 8 quarterback, sure.
But you bring up a different point off of that point, which is Herbert, who I think used to be somebody everybody loved having on their fantasy team, and would go for bigger bucks for quarterback auctions, and he'd be a higher draft pick. But people seem to be terrified of him. He's hurt. He's got the plantar fascia thing. He's got the Harbaugh offense. Is he even a fantasy starter this year?
I don't think so.
Wow.
He's not going to run a lot. I think they're going to be like bottom 5 in the league in passing. I think the team is going to be good, and it's probably going to be better overall in real football. But no, I don't think he should be a top 12
Can I
guy.
throw quarterbacks at you guys and tell me if you would take Justin Herbert over them just in fantasy?
Yeah.
Oh, let's do that.
Bryce Young.
No.
You would take him over Bryce Young?
I would.
Yes. Yeah, I want to answer it correctly. I would take Herbert over Bryce Young. Yes.
Trevor Lawrence.
I'd rather have Lawrence.
Me too.
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels easily.
Wow. I feel like that I need to recuse myself. I have too much invested.
What do you mean recuse yourself? Why can't you just answer it honestly?
Because
Baker Mayfield? Baker Mayfield?
No.
Herbert's better than
yeah.
So he's somewhere between Jaden Daniels and Baker Mayfield.
I have him 14th.
Would you rather have him or Rodgers?
Oh, that's close because I think both teams aren't going to throw a ton. Probably Herbert. I don't know. That's close. I would be fine if you wanted Rodgers.
Would you rather have Deshaun Watson or Matt Ryan, who's no longer in the league?
It's close. I don't know. Deshaun Watson, a lot of upside.
You look, the Deshaun Watson that won that game against Baltimore in that fourth quarter by essentially running. Like, I think that version of the offense is there if they can protect him. They didn't ask him to throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field over that entire stretch, and they kicked Baltimore's ass. They out-physicaled them. So if that's the version of Deshaun that becomes the blueprint for Cleveland this upcoming season, I don't hate him.
And that's all we need to hear from Deshaun Watson's defense attorney, Joe House.
Well, he didn't play any more games after that because he got hurt. That was the last game, but he went out on a high.
I like the Josh Palmer one. I'm in on that one. It is one of those things, though, where I feel like when we get closer to opening day and somebody really pumps him up and all of a sudden somebody's spending $16 for him in your auction. You're like, what's going on?
I don't think anybody gives a shit about Josh Palmer. No one's going to say a word when you draft him, and I think he'll start for you all year.
What did the Danny say about this?
Danny Kelly is with me, and Heifetz is against me.
Okay.
Is Josh Palmer, who's better to target in that offense, all kidding aside, Will Dissly or Josh Palmer?
I think it's Josh Palmer.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. All right. Third pick is...
I don't know if I'm just being a contrarian because everybody else is out on this guy, and sometimes I just tend to zag. But I'm into Christian Watson, the receiver on the Packers, who everybody is completely out on, and I think he's one of the biggest steals of the year. Everybody.
What did I do?
I'm going to raise my hand right here.
What happened?
I hate... Listen, this is all sports hate and fantasy hate, but I fantasy fucking hate his guts.
Yeah,
I hate that guy.
Fair.
He killed me last year, and I traded for him, and then he immediately turned it on. I was so mad.
I traded him to you. No,
I know.
I got him.
This is the time to buy. Let me tell you why. I think he's discount Mike Evans. I really do. This is exactly the situation you want in fantasy. He's an affordable number one guy in the offense. The offense is very good. He has an elite quarterback, great play caller. I think we're just overthinking all of this. Everybody's in love with Dontavian Wicks and Jaden Reed, who I think are all good players. But when Christian Watson was actually on the field and playing, it was clear that he was the number one option. He led the team in targets and end zone targets and air yards. He played 9 games last year. And in those 9 games, he led the league in end zone targets. Like this guy's, do you remember his rookie season? He had 8 touchdowns and I
had him that year. Yeah, no, he was kind of electric. He reminds me of Drake London, where these guys in fantasy who don't actually produce, but they become sexier picks than maybe the value is. And with the Watson thing, we just haven't seen him stay on the field for an entire season. And also, I worry about how good their receivers are. Like, maybe it's one of those teams that they have 4 good guys. Maybe there is no number one receiver on that team. Is that possible?
It's possible, but usually the cream rises to the top. And with him, we have like a sample size of last year. He was clearly the number one guy when they were all on the field. He just had this hamstring issue, and it was the same thing Kamara had. I don't know if you guys remember that from last year. He had basically his legs weighed different amounts. Christian Watson's muscles in his legs are very imbalanced. And he realized that this offseason, one leg was 20% stronger than the other leg. And Kamara had the same issue, and it's why he kept pulling his hamstring over and over. And now he's claimed that they're only 6% apart, and he's fixed it, and he's been healthy all camp, and he looks great. So I think he's a massive steal.
This is why Craig, it's one of the top fantasy football podcasts, because we talk about leg weight percentages. 6% feels like it's in the right ballpark. What were you going to say, House?
Just that I lived through this with Keenan Allen 2 years ago when I bought him for $42 in our auction league, and the mother effer pulled a hamstring and never showed up, and then came back last year and was effing dominant the whole season, so much so that I think he helped, somebody, finish very high in our league. The Christian Watson proposition makes so much sense because he is their vertical game. He stretches the field. He's the guy that gets the most out of what Jordan Love is best at, to me, which is getting the ball the F down the field with accuracy. Watson's a beneficiary of it. I like this. Where do we take him, though, Craig? What's the right price? Where are we getting him?
Yeah, what tier? What tier? You haven't done receiver tiers yet. So what's he like, tier 4, tier 3?
Yeah, right now, the great thing about him is he's incredibly affordable. He's going 80th overall right now. And meanwhile, Nico Collins is going in the 30s. And you tell me, what is the major difference?
Collins.
Yeah, but Nico Collins
plays football every day.
Okay, fair. But you were
Nico
talking
Collins
about,
stays on the field. There's one.
I mean, but you were like, oh, there's a million wide receivers in Green Bay. Who, how many balls is Christian Watson going to get? Well, Nico Collins is going up against Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. No one seems to care about that. And yet there's much less competition, in my opinion, in Green Bay with Christian Watson. And you get him 50 spots later.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
I'm on Watson. I like it.
Well, House loves Green Bay. I feel like House is... Green Bay could be, every year there's a team that could really just kill people from an NFL futures standpoint, from a division bet standpoint, from win total standpoint, from fantasy standpoint. They're being treated like they are, one of the great offenses of the 2020s, the way we're all talking about them. And I include myself because I think they're going to be really good. And I'm just wondering how disappointing it could get.
That's fair. I mean, what you want to do is like you want to find those offenses that are going to take the big leap in fantasy. If you were able to predict the Texans' ascension last year, you would have won your league. And so it's like,
well, you know what we were doing that with? We were doing that with Atlanta for like 3 years in a row, and we were paying $25 for Kyle Pitts. Yeah, we're back doing it one more time. But yeah, sometimes it's not an offense you expect that ends up being the offense.
I just think it's weird that everybody's in love with the Packers. Everybody thinks they're a top 5 team. People have them as a Super Bowl contender. And like, there's nobody on their team getting drafted in the top 40 in fantasy. It's weird.
That's fair. All right. We're down to the top 2. Who do you have in the number 2 spot?
I've never said this in my life, but I'm betting on the Jets. And I love Garrett Wilson. I think he's going to be one of the best wide receivers in the league. I have him as my 3rd wide receiver off the board. I genuinely do not see a scenario in which he's not a top 5 guy unless he gets hurt. I just don't see it.
Well, wait. Unless he gets hurt, what if Rodgers gets hurt? Or should I say when Rodgers gets hurt?
I don't see a non-injury related scenario in which he's not a top 5 guy. So I understand if you're worried about that. But to me, he's clearly one of the best wide receivers in the league. I mean, he was 4th in the NFL in targets last year, and yet he had a terrible fantasy year because he was catching passes from Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle.
4.5 yards down the field.
Yeah, the Jets
are all they could muster.
I do the player rankings that I do that really help me like figure out the team and the future and all that stuff. And he was the toughest one to figure out all the receivers because I had like as alphas Jefferson and Tyreek. I think they're just at the top like that. I had them for 5-pointers, and then I had Chase and Adams and Lamb and AJ Brown and St. Brown as the 4-pointer guys. And I really wanted to put Wilson in that group, but it's more a Rodgers thing than a Wilson thing for me. I don't know if I trust Rodgers to stay healthy. I think from a talent standpoint, if you just switched Wilson with any of those teams, I just feel like he'd be in that conversation. I'm with you. I think from a talent standpoint, he should be in the top 4.
Yeah,
what do we expect from Rodgers? I know that's been a big topic, but what are the tea leaves saying?
Well, I mean, if you draft Tyreek Hill, you got to deal with Tua's health. I mean, you always got to factor that in with a lot of guys. But to me, I just think this is the biggest upgrade at quarterback in the history of the NFL, probably. And I could list you a million stats as to why last year was such a disaster. I don't know do you remember week 1 when Rodgers got hurt and Zach Wilson came in and he actually threw a touchdown to Garrett Wilson, but Wilson had to like intercept his own pass. He like tipped it to himself. And yeah, I mean, the Jets threw for 11 touchdowns last year in the entire season. 11.
Give House your inside the 5 stat.
Oh, for Breece Hall?
Yeah.
The Jets were the only team in the league to not give their running back a carry from the 1. They were the only team. And
any running back, not just Breece Hall. All the running backs of the team, they did not have a carry from the 1-yard line.
And Breece Hall had 1 carry inside the 5.
All season.
Year.
Nathaniel Hackett, baby.
So I love Breece Hall too. But yeah, also, it's basically just Garrett Wilson. Mike Williams is there. He's coming off an ACL. He's older. And if you go back to all of Rodgers' receivers, there's a good stat that anytime a Rodgers receiver has seen over 140 targets in a year, they have not finished lower than 4th at wide receiver. Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Devontae Adams. And I think Garrett Wilson's going to see 140 targets, and I think he's better than all those guys. Maybe not Devontae Adams.
You see, the problem with Garrett Wilson is he's going to be treated in that real estate bracket with Jefferson and Tyreek and Chase and AJ Brown and Lamb. I think he will be either the 4th or 6th, 4th, 5th, 6th receiver taken in any draft, price wise or in a draft.
That's fine with me. Yeah, I think in some drafts he'll go in the 2nd round. I think you could take him in the 1st.
Any last Garrett Wilson thoughts, House?
You just have to be an all-in person on the Jets, and I kind of am. I've got some exposure.
So. O-line's way better.
Yeah, it's way better. And what they did defensively as well. I just think they're going to be able to control both sides of the ball, and I like the Jets.
Yeah, I don't know what food item Garrett Wilson would be in this scenario.
Oh, he's a delicacy
because he's not the veal chop. It's more.
He might be like
it's
uni,
a really high end seafood.
A rare sushi item.
We should have just done that as a podcast. Food items compared to.
It's not too late. It's not too late. I'm here for it, baby.
I had the Tiki Barber as the Reuben 20 years ago. where you just know the Reuben's going to be good, and if you don't order it,
always
if somebody else at the table orders it, and you're like, fucking hey, the Reuben looks great. Why didn't I get the Reuben? It's so reliable.
Cut me a corner of that thing.
Who's the Reuben running back this year? Is it Derrick Henry?
Oh, that's not bad. Every year you're like, I don't know. And then it's week one and he has 180 yards.
Having Derrick Henry.
Jonathan Taylor.
Sure.
I don't trust him. I don't like what happened with him last year. All right, it's time. Craig's number one fantasy target for 2024. Who is it?
Cooper Kupp.
I love it.
I felt this way even before Puka Nacua got hurt, even though Puka's supposed to be ready and back for week one. But right now you can get Cooper Kupp a round or two later than Puka, and I just think that's wrong. I know he's had the injuries the last few years, but he's so affordable right now and he's healthy. And I think he's incredibly slept on. Last year, he hurt his hamstring twice before the season started and then hurt his ankle again mid-season. And he half got healthy at the end of the year. And over those last 6 weeks, him and Puka were both top 10 guys at the position. And Kupp's a maniac about health. Puka's already hurt. Puka was working out with Kupp this offseason and was throwing up every day because Cooper Kupp works out so hard. And look, he's 31. He's not 37. He's 2 years removed from winning the Triple Crown. And this offense is only going to go to Puka and Cooper Kupp. And I'm completely trusting the connection between Stafford and Kupp. I think the Rams are going to be really good this year. And I'm basically, in my opinion, I'm getting the same old Cooper Kupp for half the price.
And he's also hit that age, which has been happening with fantasy football ever since we started playing fantasy football, where guys become boring to take.
Yeah.
Especially when they hit their 30s.
Keenan Allen last year was perfect example of that.
This was Marvin Harrison forever.
Yeah.
He was like, I've had Marvin Harrison. Then he would go for $8 less than he should have gone for. And all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, you know who's the top 4 receiver? Marvin Harrison. The Cooper Kupp, reading about him this year, he's hitting a lot of the check marks of the guy who's just like, last year was the year from hell. I'm never letting that happen again. I'm an absolute fucking maniac this offseason. Teammates talking about, I've never seen the look in his eye like I've seen this year. It's been a lot of that. People like, holy shit, he's a man possessed. So I always like that stuff too. I will say, with fantasy and with any sport, I almost think we need a new name for pulled hamstring. It should just be gunshot wound. It doesn't sound dangerous enough for what it is. Anyone who gets, it just happened to my daughter. You have a hamstring and it's it should be 4 to 6 weeks. It's not. It's basically somebody took an elephant gun and shot you in the leg, and it's never the same for months.
We always say you pulled a muscle. What it really is a tear. We should be saying torn hamstring.
Yes. Yeah, there's no such thing as a hamstring pull. You tore the muscle and it takes forever and you can't come back from it, because when you come back, you just keep making it worse and you keep making it worse and it never recovers or gets better.
I support strong language, severed.
Yeah.
Severed hamstring. Detached. I mean, detached probably, I don't know.
Hamstring axe wound. Yeah, it just needs to sound more dangerous than it is. But yeah, he was never the same. And then finally, last, 6 weeks, started to look more like Kupp. But at that point, Nacua had passed him. I have some slight concerns about the Rams because I think they were better than people realized last year. And I thought they were discount Detroit for really the last 2 months of the season, especially, and what they got from Williams at running back. And some stuff went right for them last year. And I'm just, these top heavy teams, it just takes 2 guys going down and all of a sudden your season's spiraling out of control. But fundamentally, it's a fun one. Plus,
look, you're
betting
first.
on pedigree.
Yeah, I'm not playing for 6th place. If it all blows up, it all blows up. I'll take my punishment.
Here's the reason for Kupp, and it's supportive of what both of you are saying. I also think that the Rams are prepared to take a step back. It's on defense. It's on defense because Aaron Donald is irreplaceable. They grabbed 2 Florida State defensive linemen, and that's awesome. Great team building, great job by them. But the sheer vacuum that is left by Donald not being there, it's going to expose. They had 2 rookies last year, accumulate most of the sacks, most of the pressures, because Aaron Donald's occupying 4 human beings all at once.
Right.
So I think the defense is their front 7 is like a bottom 10 front seven. Their secondary is in the same class. So what that means is the Rams are going to be playing from behind. And if they're playing from behind, then Cooper Kupp is going to be a prime target. And as long as Matthew Stafford is healthy, then I like this idea of Kupp, this resurgence. Let's get him back to the top year.
I mean, like 2 years ago, Kupp was going like 4th overall in your drafts. And now he's going 40th. He's the same guy.
Well, that's the thing. Once like the A+ lister receivers start going off the board, the value guys, those guys that, especially in the auctions, the guys you can grab for like $15, $9, $12, couple probably go. I think by the time we get to the season, people will probably sniff this out a little bit better. There's been some Rams offensive line stuff already though, right?
As in bad stuff or good stuff?
I thought there was like some shaky stuff in the preseason and the training camp, and they've already had a couple injuries.
Yeah, but McVay has continued to reinvent himself. McVay is the best coach in the league, in my opinion. From the offense they were running 3 years ago is like completely different from what they're doing now. They've completely switched up the way they run the ball. They're going to be like way heavier this year, more tight end, 2 tight end sets. They were used to be 11 personnel completely. So I think it's just going to be Puka and Kupp on the field with 2 tight ends a lot.
Who is your number one stay away for 2024 that's actually going to get highly drafted or bought? Who's on your DND list?
Jamar Chase.
Oh, wow.
I don't want anything to do with the Bengals and Joe Burrow's wrist. You can add Joe Burrow to that list as well.
I'm with Greg.
He's
the
not
Bengals are a DND for me this year.
He's not allowed to practice 3 straight days in a row. He's not allowed to throw the football 3 straight days in a row. Heifetz has been joking about this. He's like, I will draft Joe Burrow when he throws a football for 5 straight days.
Yeah, that seems like a fair request.
He ain't wrong.
There's no quarterback or pitcher in the history of sports that has suffered the same injury Burrow has. It's only linemen.
Where do you stand on Caleb?
I think I'm a little bit in on Caleb. We were talking about teams like trying to find this year's Texans. I think the Bears are in play there. I think they have a sneaky good offensive line. I think they have a sneaky good defense.
Above average offensive line and some weapons.
Oh, I mean, he has the best supporting cast of any rookie since I don't know when.
Right.
Did you watch Hard Knocks this week?
No, I actually haven't yet. How was it?
I'm not going to say. I want to have this conversation with you again after you've watched Hard Knocks.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
I have an opinion. I'm not going to say anything.
That sounds ominous to me. I don't know.
It doesn't have to be ominous. It could be, I'm all the way in. It was incredible. This dude's a born leader. They're a badass. Eberflus is a genius. Wait till you see his daughters. It's going to be a wonderful experience. Or it could be, this is going to be a train wreck. He's a midget. His accuracy is questionable. It could go either way.
All right.
But
check
out Coach Eberflus's daughters. That's all.
Okay. Now we're back to OnlyFans.
I have the Giants on my D&D list this year. And I'm fully aware of all the Neighbor stuff that's happening. I've seen the clips. He's incredible. But that's almost more of a reason that because Neighbors is going to be in the higher real estate camp, and I just don't trust Dimes at all. And I'm staying away from the entire team. Like
I said, avoid all wide receivers with shitty quarterbacks. There's nothing worse than just praying that if your guy's open, your quarterback can even get him the ball.
Well, and plus the shitty quarterback can hurt the receiver.
Yeah.
By leading him over the middle so he can get annihilated.
Craig, talk me out of it. My D&D list player.
Okay.
Travis Kelce.
I agree with it.
I mean,
he's basically said, I only care about January.
Yeah, they're keeping him on ice because he completely took off last year in the playoffs. He hurt his ankle and his knee early on in the year, but I think he kind of took his foot off the gas. I think the Chiefs really want to win this. I think they are set on this is their year. They're going to give everything they have this year to win this 3rd Super Bowl in a row. And then Travis Kelce might retire. So he's not my number 1 tight end off the board.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, even a Travis Kelce year that's an 8 out of 10, he's still a top 3 guy.
Okay.
Can I polish off one last fantasy take before we go?
Yeah.
Tight end boom.
Yeah.
There used to be a time when there was like 2 good tight ends and then 5 guys you could live with. And then if you didn't, now you're in the 8, 9, 10 camp. And all of a sudden you just have this dude who's going to get 47 catches for 540 yards and 4 TDs. And you just want to trade for one of the expensive tight ends. There's so many options this year. You even think like somebody like Musgrave on Green Bay. Like I liked that guy when he was out there and he was healthy. Njoku was awesome last year. Kincaid on Buffalo. Freiermuth on Craig's Steelers. McBride was a fucking stud. Hawkinson, Andrews, people like Andrews is back up in Baltimore. Laporta, Kelsey Kittle. Like to me, it's like the days of I need to get an awesome tight end. I'll spend $20 to $25. Like those days are over. You don't need to do that, in my opinion.
I agree. I mean, like Brock Bowers, the rookie out of Georgia, is like the best tight end prospect ever, and he's not even the top 10 guy out of drafts. So
did you
totally
see
agree.
the Raiders released their first depth chart for offense, and they're going full 12. They're like, here's our 4 tight ends, and here's our 4 receivers, and they were just like, this is who we're going to be this year, guys. Just FYI. So Bowers and Mayer are going to start and play big minutes.
Yeah, all these tight ends. We were talking about it on the fantasy show. It's like all these guys are freak receivers now, and it's like how we were comparing it to NBA. It's like all these big guys started learning how to dribble and shoot like 10 years ago, and it's kind of the same way now with all these tight ends. It used to be like there was a couple freaks who were like wide receivers and blockers, and now most of them are just pseudo wide receivers. It's like every tight end now. Kyle Pitts is a receiver.
I'll tell you who I'm not taking.
Travis Kelce.
Kyle Pitts is on my lifetime D&D. He really hurt my feelings.
I thought about putting him on this list. He's close.
Wow.
Never again. Never again. Can't do it. I think I spent $30 on him 2 years ago.
His stock will never be lower.
Well, he's not going to be on my team. All right, Craig, listen to the Ringer Fantasy Football Show. It's an excellent podcast. House, thanks for joining. I didn't even tell you what the topic was. I knew you'd enjoy it.
Loved you so much.
Thanks for stepping in, guys.
See handsome Craig.
Yeah.